Right. And,
Yeah.
and well, and then the question is like, what can we do? So
Right.
does transport distance and time matter when you are training people to do more on scene? Can we do more in that first 15, 20 minutes? And then, you think about transport with lights and sirens and the safety of the crew, the safety of the people. What's the better outcome? And where are those metrics being measured? You know what I mean? Like, who is measuring those?
The views expressed on EMS In and Out are solely those of the hosts and do not represent any affiliate agencies or employers. This podcast is for educational discussion only. Always follow your local protocols and consult your medical direction when applying any clinical practices discussed. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of EMS In and Out. My name's Kyle Goodknight. I'm one of your hosts along with my other host, Rob Moyers. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. So glad that we could be together today on this virtual recording for our very first episode. What are you excited about?
Well, the topics that we've kind of put together, the list, all of the different ideas that we are going to share and the knowledge that we have collectively to kind of put out there.
And just so people know, this is our first episode. We had a little intro episode. You may have seen that, but our backgrounds are very vast between the two of us. I think we figured out we have over 40 years of experience between the two of us.
At least.
Yeah. I'm 30 years medical total because I was 10 years a respiratory therapist first, and then I became a paramedic, and I've been a paramedic for 22. So I've been medical for 30. And Rob, how long have you been?
2001 is when I got my medic.
So you're at 26 years.
Yeah, I did a year and a half in a hospital and an ER, and then I've been EMS ever since then.
Okay, great, fantastic. So it's 30 plus 25.
Too many years is what that adds up to. That's where the math adds up to.
And just to clarify, just to help also people to know where we're coming from. Of course, we're never going to know everything about every topic, but we do have a lot of experience in our specific areas of practice. So I have a very strong respiratory therapy background, ventilators, ICU, level 1 trauma centers. That hasn't really transferred over the ventilator stuff, and that's going to be one of our topics in a couple shows of ventilators in the EMS system. So I'm super excited for that. I think that's going to be episode 2. But also, I was a medical sales rep for 9 years and did medical supply development for a year. I helped bring the EZIO to market in the lower half of Ohio. So there's that kind of knowledge that we're going to be able to bring to the table of products, not only from the manufacturer side of it, but from the usage side of it. We also have training. Rob and I both have training. Talk a little bit about that part that you know about the two of us when it comes to what we do now and the training side of things.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we connected. It was through, training and you would talk about ventilators. I actually had met with a sales rep about ventilators who connected us. And, a lot of the new stuff, like when you talk about new science and new implementations in pre-hospital stuff, it all starts with training. If you can't train it and then maintain training, maintain competency, you're not going to move forward in anything as far as like, what's the new stuff out there? Vents, whole blood, finger thoracostomies in Ohio, all these new things that are coming our way sooner rather than later. So you have to train it. And then, your knowledge, pre-hospital, respiratory therapy. We talked a lot about ventilators. That was a really big thing that we kind of connected on is like, you were a little dumbfounded, almost like, why are you guys using ventilators with your response time, which is kind of a segue into what we're talking about.
Right.
And
exactly.
and it was like, and then once we started talking about it, it was like, oh yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense. Like, that therapy out there for people is good stuff. It's good news for us and what we're doing is pre-hospital here and throughout the country,
Right. Exactly. And, we have a lot of contacts where, just to give you the listener or the watcher, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. And that's a little shameless plug to don't forget to subscribe, like, and share on YouTube. We're on all the platforms. We're actually I added a new platform to the system I'd never heard of. I think it's called Dezingle or something like that. I just added it the other day. I haven't actually done the final connection, but we're going to be on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, of course, Spotify, and YouTube. So you'll be able to find us anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast, or YouTube is always going to be a good choice. We'll be here on video. There'll be times where we actually may show some of the equipment that we talk about. Another thing that we're planning on doing, and I just want to catch people up, I know we talked about this in the intro video, but we'll eventually be bringing on guests. So guests that have more knowledge than us that we need to bring in and teach us, or to explain things to us, or to have a different perspective. We will have guests eventually. A lot of the first episode is just going to be me and Rob just kind of riffing back and forth about different topics. Today's topic is going to be the transport times. He works in a system that has very short transport times. I work in a system that has a little bit longer, almost quadruple the amount of time to get someone to the hospital. So hence the word EMS, in and out. In the city, Rob. Out of the city, me. We practice under the same state scope of practice. That's what I was trying to find.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're under the
same state umbrella. Right?
Yeah, we're Rob and I are under the same state umbrellas, but we just have two different settings that they could or couldn't be using, and that's kind of one of the discussions we'll have. Before we get in our topic, anything else, Rob? You want to shout out to your peeps? You said you've had a lot of people wanting to listen.
I'll be reaching out to them real soon once this posts. I was recently voted in as a second vice president of our union. So shout out to CARE 1975 of Cleveland EMS.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get to it. Today's topic is going to be about transport times. We figured that this would be a great way to start. One of the things that really actually took both of us by surprise when we started sharing things about one another's background and the way we do stuff. It came up pretty quickly that, wait a second, you have, what's your average transport time to a hospital, Rob?
I mean, so transport time is very short. The idea that I think the metric that really matters is response time, right?
Okay.
So what's your response time to a scene? And I mean, we can show up on scene and scoop somebody up and start driving and hit a hospital in 5 minutes. Is it the right hospital for that patient? Are we doing the right thing by scooping somebody up and going? I mean, we're going to talk about cardiac arrest, and the best way to practice cardiac arrest at some point, right? Is it scoop them up and go, though? That's probably not the best idea. So, right. So response time is even probably more of an important metric. And that's probably where our differentials will come. I mean, you told me some of your response times, and I thought in my head, I responded, been on scene, picked a patient up, and given report in the amount of time that you've had to respond to a call.
There are a couple places.
Crazy.
Yeah, there's a couple places, because I'm a county entity. I'm a county department, and Rob's a city department. So there are some places, especially when we're on the outskirts of our county, when we do mutual aid, we go to another county and help them out. That could be that 8 to 9 minute time to get there. When it comes to the time it takes once we get a patient and time to a definitive hospital that is proper for the care, let's say trauma, I'm 25 minutes even at best from most of my locations within my run area. Now, we do have some stations and some trucks that are housed a little bit closer to the hospitals, of course, that may not be a trauma center, but they're still closer. So we do have a couple of stations that are in that, that realm of being able to, we want to try to be to someone within 4 minutes as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean,
luck.
yeah. Well, you know what I mean.
Like,
I mean, a minute to get to your truck and get out the door, minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the NIMSY, is that what is it? NIMSY? It's some of the same. NEMSIS, yeah. It's the one thing too between Rob and I both. We are not a fire-based EMS, so both of our systems are. Both of our systems are the third-party EMS only. Do we have firefighters that work for us? Yes, they don't do fire. They don't do fire responsibilities on scene with us, even though they may be a firefighter. So, but yeah, so our response times, I think in my territory where I run, my township that I'm in, I can, we're usually, 4 minutes at the most. It's when we have to go do mutual aid. I would say for my department, there's 3 stations that could be in a hospital in less than 5 minutes. That's it, out of 11.
Okay. So when you think about times, like, are you thinking about like incident to definitive care time? Because like for me, what it seems like is you guys have a good response time, but but transport time is
Yeah,
long
yeah, and that's where it
versus
could be. Yeah,
right, versus like an inner city where you have a lot of calls as a third service. Your response times may be a little longer just because of resources, but
correct.
you can transport in 5 minutes.
Right, right.
So a situation like ours, like if you're thinking of how do you get care to somebody in 4 minutes, well, then you kind of rely on partners and who can deliver basic life support, right? So
Right,
you're looking at primary assessment. That's all BLS. So
right.
how do you deliver very good BLS and then keep somebody alive in a situation where response
Yeah.
time for an ALS might be a little bit longer
Well, the good
based
news
on,
is,
resources, right?
yeah, the good news for us, like, and you've explained it to me when it comes to how you guys are affiliated with the fire departments. We can either be the first ones on scene a lot of times in that 4 minutes, and we are two ALS. So our
Mhm.
vehicle carries minimum of two paramedics. Well, it could go as low as one paramedic and one advanced. We do not run paramedic basic at this time.
Okay.
So
Is that because you don't have like other resources to back you up? Like you're just you?
well, that's how it was set up in the beginning when there wasn't resources. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
we were
Sure.
part of one of the fastest growing counties in Ohio is Delaware County. And it's like the sixth fastest growing county in the nation. So it was set up that way in 1972 for our third party service, and it was three medics back then. So it was the standard of care. And then when fire departments started becoming full time because of population growth
Mhm.
and neighborhoods popping up and schools popping up, we had a major population boom anywhere between like 95 through, I mean, we're still growing. We're still building like crazy up in our, I say up, for you it's down, in our,
Yeah.
and we're
Spatial
north. Yeah,
relationship,
we're
right? Nobody
north
teaches
of,
that
yeah,
no
we're
more.
north of Columbus. So, and,
Yeah.
our county is a very booming county. Like we have an IKEA, we have a Top Golf, and that's the only
So
Top Golf
that's
in
you.
Columbus.
So
Yeah.
so I've been there. Obviously, I've been there.
Yeah.
Like so that's your area.
That's
That's where
well,
you would respond.
that's our county, but Columbus Fire actually annexed all of that area. Get the sales tax from that area, but they get the income tax for that area, so they cover police and fire up to right about there, and then it's so weird because I have to actually drive through Columbus territory to get to the freeway on one of my trucks, and the freeway is
Interesting.
us. You see what I mean? But part of the
Interesting.
freeway is them. It's so weird. It's like the
Yeah,
dividing
yeah, yeah.
lines are
That's
so
that's
wonky.
that's
Now we
crazy. Yeah.
all share, we all do mutual aid, we all discuss our run cards, and it's set up appropriately. So if somebody's out, the other person backfills. We will accommodate the right people, right? The right trucks closest to the scene will get the call, whether that's Columbus Fire, whether that's Westerville, whether that's a couple of different municipalities within and around us. Because and that's one of the things that when we were first talking and describing each other's run volume and call volume, it's just way different. You work 12-hour shifts. I work 24-hour
Yes.
shifts. Like
Yes.
there's no way you could do a 24-hour shift. I mean, you probably could,
I
but
mean,
you couldn't sustain it.
it could, it would have to be studied. Like you would have to do it. Like you would just have to do it and run a trial and see how it goes, see where you can make changes. I mean, saying anything is impossible is kind of impossible. But there was talks about it at some point. So what's really weird with Cleveland is we're kind of a bubble because we have a natural border, which is a lake, and then everything outskirts from there to a border. So we have some natural dividers, which are highways. So we have, you have to drive through maybe like Brook Park on 480 to get back into Cleveland to get into North Olmsted. So there's,
Well,
there's that kind of situation.
right.
But like we rarely call for mutual aid. I think there was one time maybe during the Cavs parade that we did, but
Gotcha.
we're between us and we have first responders, which are our fire department, and then we just handle everything in the borders. And think of how many hospitals are in the like natural Cleveland area,
Well, and
and
that's
how
what I
many
don't
big
know.
ones.
That's actually what I don't know. I don't know, and you
Oh,
probably don't
there's
know
so
what
many.
kind of Columbus hospitals we have. So,
Yeah,
um,
right. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
like, how many? So we have 3 level 1 trauma centers. So we
Okay.
have we have
That are
OSU
how far average are those from you
from
right
us,
now?
25
From
minutes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Holy
and
smokes.
maybe a little bit longer for some of our northern trucks. Right.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
we're divided by a river.
we do have 71 that goes right through the middle of our county. So we can get to 71 and be on a thoroughfare right down
Okay.
to the city.
So we're divided by a river.
Right.
And then on each side of that river are the hospitals, right? And on the west side, we have level one trauma, level one burn. On the east side, we have level one trauma, level one peds. And then I'm sure you've probably seen in the news, Cleveland Clinic is trying to become a level one trauma center. So we might
Oh,
have
I didn't realize they weren't.
literally two within like, a 30-second drive from each other, which is going to be kind of,
So we have 3 level 1s. One of those is a pediatric level 1, okay? They do not see any adults unless the adult age is being cared for as, like, in a disability service. That's the only caveat for that hospital where on paper, yes, that's a 22, 25-year-old going to children's hospital, but their doctors are only their doctors. Then
yeah, yeah,
we have,
absolutely.
of course, a university hospital like you do. We have Ohio State University, that's a level 1, and then we have Grant, which is a level 1. And then
Okay,
we have some really good level 2s too, where I will actually even take what would be perceived as a level 1 trauma to a level 2 trauma center because of course, we could even talk about that sometime. Level 1 trauma centers, what is the criteria? One of them is
sure.
research. Well, level 2 trauma centers may not have the research, but they have everything else. When I chopped off my fingers, I wanted to be taken to Riverside, period. No,
Right.
end of discussion. They had the microsurgeons for my fingers. I take all hand injuries, foot injuries that aren't a multi-system trauma. I will take them to Riverside because that's the best place for them.
Right.
Over even like I've heard of people before taking them to a different trauma center and then transfer them back to Riverside because that's where the hand specialists are. So
And that's important. And that's important. Like we fall under the knots trauma protocol with his
okay, yep,
it
we're
it
cots.
okay, exactly. So the idea is like we know who to take where. And hand is one of the things. Burns are one of the things.
Sure.
Like we have a
Yep.
criteria
Burns
where we
goes to
go.
Ohio State. I don't take a burn to. I typically wouldn't take
Exactly.
a burn to Grant. Correct.
So Metro Hospital is our level one trauma adult and burn center, and they're
Yep.
also like major into our med command, and our medical director works at Metro. So like they're a big one. On the east side, we have University Hospital
Yep.
and soon to be Cleveland Clinic. Now University has a pediatric, which is
Mm.
Rainbows. So
Yep.
that's the only level one trauma center
For
in
peds. Okay.
Cleveland for kids.
Right. So yeah.
Metro is a level two trauma center for peds,
Okay.
and they'll fly to Akron, I think. And
Okay.
again, I'm not trying to speak for anybody, but I
Right.
think that's
Yeah, and
their
that's and that's
capabilities.
just how we and representing us and our experience and our background and how we've interpreted throughout the years and how we will interpret anything new coming up. So just a
Right.
quick disclaimer there, because as we start getting, because I'm the same way. It's when you talk about like, okay, so a newborn. That's a pediatric, right? However, I'm gonna take a healthy newborn. I'm taken to a couple of the other hospitals that aren't even in the city because they have very good birthing centers. A pregnant
Yeah.
woman, I'm gonna take them if as long as they're not a trauma or something detrimental, I'm going to take them to a couple of the hospitals that are on the outside of Columbus, around the outer belt, because they have very good birthing centers. And they also
Okay.
have, what's cool about those hospitals is every hospital in Columbus, their NICUs, if you have a NICU in a hospital in Columbus, you are connected to Children's Hospitals NICUs, doctors, and their
Okay.
protocols. So,
Good. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
So
I
that,
think peds is like the up and coming
yeah.
thing that
Well, when it comes to
you're going to
birthing
start seeing
centers, like how does
changes.
that
Yeah.
work with you? How does that work with you guys?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the call that determines. But
Sure.
so we have a transport matrix in for Cleveland EMS that tells us what hospitals can handle what, right? And we try to, as long as it's a stable patient, try to get them to the hospital that they are connected to. Um, I I can't see that if we have an emergent situation, bypassing a hospital that's capable of handling that
Correct. Yeah,
specific
absolutely.
patient.
That's all. Yeah,
But if
that's
you
all.
have
Like, yeah.
so yeah, it's all situational. Like if you have somebody that's just my water broke and I'm ready to go,
Right.
and I go to a hospital 15 minutes, 20 minutes across town, maybe that's okay. if I have, my water broke and I got meconium staining and I got bleeding, well, now you're going to go to
That's
the
another story,
closest.
right? Or if I'm
Yes,
crowning,
right.
yeah,
Right. And we're lucky in the city that I work in that we have so many options that the option that we need in that moment is not far from where we're at any given time.
sure,
Right.
sure. Where
So it's like,
my option could be 25 minutes further. Yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
So the question I have then is, you know, our citizens rely on us,
Mhm.
and response matrix matter when it comes to like, if you're in charge of a division, and you're getting pressed by city government to say, well, your response times need to be better. Like, what would you say is the best course of action in that situation? Like, you yourself, you're running a division. They're saying, well, we need a minute less of response time for you. What would your first thing?
I
Would it be more
mean,
people?
it would be another truck. Yeah.
Yeah, right. More people, right? You
Yep.
would think that, right?
Yep.
Versus like, you can't argue time, distance, weather, that kind of stuff. So like, when you have short possible response times, that's one argument. When it's like somebody like you, if you're traveling 20 minutes, you can't make 20 minutes less than 20 minutes.
Right,
Like,
right.
it is
I
what
mean,
it
we
is,
could,
right?
and when I say 20 minutes, that's getting it. That's I can be
Or
long
to a
if
hospital, right?
right.
So
Well,
what do you do in that time? So how does your
yeah.
training then influence, or I'm sorry, how does your transport time influence your
What
training?
we do, right? Yeah, what we
Yes,
do. Well, typically we still want to get 12 leads within the first 10 minutes. We want to get aspirin within the first 10 minutes. So there's some matrix that we abide by that is a
sure.
medical decision, right? What does that mean? If the person meets us at the side, the side door of the medic, and they can jump in, well, can we do that 12 lead rolling down the road? Or is it if they're in their house in a back room and it's going to take us a decent amount of time to get them out of the house? Well, then the 12 lead is going to happen inside the house. So,
Sure.
so ultimately, we can get deeper into our protocol, I think. And that's maybe where the next part of the conversation can go is when you're dealing with trying to get someone to a hospital and you're right around the corner from a hospital, how far into your protocol do you get? Like as you get
Right.
further along, like how many nitro tabs do you drop or nitro, sprays? I'm not sure what you have. How many doses of epi during cardiac arrest do you usually get to? And we can be up to, I think my last cardiac arrest, I think I gave like 6 doses of epi before we even let, well, that's a whole nother matrix because we stay and play like you do. So
Right. And,
yeah,
and well, and then the question is like, what can we do? So
right.
does transport distance and time matter when you are training people to do more on scene?
And that's
Right.
another
Like,
thing. Yeah.
right. Can we do more in that first 15, 20 minutes? And then, you think about transport with lights and sirens and the safety of the crew, the safety of the people.
Yep.
Like what's the better outcome? And where are those metrics being measured? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, who is
And
measuring those?
And
Where are
what can
these
we do in the
studies?
back of the truck that they can do still at the hospital? There's a lot of stuff now
Exactly.
because we have grown as a profession. EMS, I mean, we used to not be able to do I don't know this world, but there used to not be 12 leads on EMS vehicles. You
So
know?
I have to say this. I was in paramedic school when my instructors were saying this is the new upcoming thing is 12 leads. That's a new
Really?
upcoming thing.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, we're doing this. And then like,
So that was
a
90s.
few
That was
years.
the 90s.
So
So we weren't doing 12
I
leads in the
so I
90s?
was so I was 2000 into 2001 is when I did medic.
Yeah,
But
so what yeah,
it was really pushed as like a standard now. Not
for
that we can
EMS.
do them, but
Right.
this is
I
a
see what you're saying.
standard of
Standard. Yep.
care.
Yep.
This is what we're doing now, as opposed to, a blood pressure whenever that became a thing.
Yeah.
This is like, yeah, you're doing a 12 lead in the field. This is what we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Life pack 12, maybe. I think 10, 12 is what I said.
Well, I don't know the 10. I only know the 12. A lot of the older people that I work with, they know the 10. I have a few guys that remember doing one lead capture, second lead capture,
That's
third lead
crazy. That's so
capture,
crazy.
and I'm just
That's
like,
so
what?
crazy.
Because I'm used to. So I've been doing 12 leads in the ER in the hospital setting for prior, 10 years prior to becoming a paramedic. So 12 leads to me when I came into EMS. I came into EMS in 2006. So it sounds like when it became a standard of care, like you're saying in that 2000 range, it sounds to me like essentially when I first started school in respiratory therapy, that was 95, 96, 97 timeframe right there. And, ER hospital 12 leads they've been around forever, so it's
Sure.
really weird to think that I was right on the cusp of it becoming standard. The one thing I was happy to know that is I watched CPAP become a standard.
So did I. So did
I
I.
saw
That was huge.
EZIO become a standard, depending on
So did I.
what's going on. So those are some really good things what we've been in it long enough. We've seen some standard, like you've seen for your department, you've seen ventilators start to become a standard. Like
That's
I'm
the
on the
next
cusp
thing.
of,
That's the next
yeah,
thing, right?
I'm on the cusp of seeing if that's going to become standard as a whole across the nation.
Whole blood. That's
Yeah,
another one.
whole blood. We're seeing some really
Yeah.
cool stuff. Pediatric CPAP was never done in the field before 7-8 years ago, and and now it is, and at least in Central Ohio, and I'm part of the team that's trying to get that moved forward throughout the whole nation, and our goal is in the next 2 years that it's standard for everybody in the nation to do pediatric CPAP because PEEP is PEEP, and
Right.
we
So
don't
then
have to use diesel fuel and intubate. Those are the two choices. Maybe a little bit of blow by. Now we have another option that can actually stabilize a patient.
right. And then the question then stands is response time versus transport time. Which one is more important? Can you get to somebody quicker
Right.
and give that kind of care? And how do do all squads have this ability to care, or do you have a fast car that can, maybe
Mm.
travel with, a certain type of care? Like,
We dabbled in quick response unit crew. I think that's what they
mhm,
may have called it. I can't remember what they called it. We do have captain's vehicles that kind of respond like that. But of course, some fire departments have the grass truck. Some fire departments have the
sure,
battalion chief, and they're paramedics, and they can go and they may have some ALS devices like they may have a squeezer, they may have an EZIO, they may have CPAP, they may have an oxygen tank, they may have a monitor or an AED. So that's
sure,
one thing when
yeah,
it comes to getting to people fast. I think, to answer your question, because you've asked it several times and I've never answered, so I apologize for that. But I think
mm,
response times are more important than how long it takes to transfer to get definitive care. Ultimately,
sure,
for the most runs, 90% of our runs, it
yeah.
is more important to get to them faster and start care, because there's a lot of stuff we have the ability to do now from the powers that be of our medical direction that gives us the protocols that we can deal with them. And this is going to be a huge topic for you and I to talk about. I do RSI. You do not. It is not in your scope of practice for your medical direction at
So
this
it's in the
point in
scope of
time.
practice in the state
It's just state, yeah,
currently. Yeah,
yeah. And
currently that's not being done. But
that blows my mind until I remember when we implemented it, how big of a deal it was. It never was a big deal to me because I was from the hospital world and we did it all the time.
sure,
And
yeah,
I was part of the airway team that did it all the time in a very controlled setting. So when I came to EMS and we weren't doing RSI, I'm like, what is going on? What's the big deal? Like, I was used to it. But when we were trained, I was a paramedic and my department got trained to do RSI. We had to be personally checked off by our medical director.
that's a huge deal, right? And you have to think about that. Like, how big is the department? The financial investment it is to
Hmm.
get either everybody or a certain amount of people. You know what I mean? Like, you have to
Yeah.
think about that. Is it worth it? Does everybody get trained in it? Do you have a specialty response group that can do that kind of thing? I mean, there's so many decisions that have to go into that.
Yeah.
The bigger the entity is that you're
Right.
dealing with. So how do you deploy RSI in a municipality, like in a city? Like, do you do it where, I mean, if you do that, everybody has to get trained. Everybody has to prove competency every so often, and everybody has to get paid for that. And then you have to also account for instructors like myself who have other tasks. And like, there's so many things that go into those decisions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
That's a whole,
that's
like I said, that's
luckily
one
I'm
of,
not
yeah.
in that decision making. I'm just a guy that might train them. You know
Right.
what I mean? I'm
Right.
just luckily I don't have to think about that kind of stuff. But
Right. Well, and
there's a lot that
that's
goes
the
into
kind of,
that.
yeah, that's the kind of topics we're going to be talking about. Like I said, this is our inaugural full episode, and we've touched on several different topics that we're going to be diving deeper in. We're going to have a much deeper conversation about the RSI/DSI, because
Yeah.
that's one big thing going on right now is they're trying to change the wordage, because there is nothing rapid about RSI. It's rapid
Yeah.
sequence intubation. Nothing is rapid about that. So the change the word to DSI slows people down in their brain, so mistakes don't happen as fast. So
It's like UFO, and what do they change UFO to?
I don't know. Yeah.
No, it's not called a
Unexplained.
UFO
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Or that's
UAE or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Because,
yeah.
because you don't want people to think about UFOs when you see UFOs,
Yeah,
God forbid.
exactly. When you, yeah. So, we talked about a little bit about cardiac arrest and stay and play. We're going to have a whole conversation about that. Ventilators, we discussed that. We teased pediatric CPAP a little bit. We're going to be talking about all these different topics. I'm so excited to be doing this with you, Rob. One of the cool things about when I met you, we talked in the middle of your shift. I think we talked for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. There was, yeah.
he wasn't talking about stuff that wasn't appropriate to his department at the time. So full disclosure, he was talking
Yeah.
about something that they needed information on.
I think everything kind of centered around vents at the point because I was
Yeah.
reaching out to everybody and anybody that
Yep.
had pre-hospital or any type of understanding of vents because, try to be the guy that is in charge of the vent, training and
Yeah.
protocol writing and, find pre-hospital vent stuff on Google.
Yeah.
Give it a
It's
shot.
not well. So
See,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you'll
exactly.
have
Tell me how
inter-hospital.
established
Yeah,
that
you have
is.
inter-hospital with
Yes,
stable patients.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
different,
Yeah.
but
Right, right,
and
right.
that kind of brings me to what our next discussion is going to be about. It won't be during this episode, but the episode 2 is going to be about ventilators. I've got a lot of questions about vents. Rob's got a lot of knowledge about EMS implementation of vents, and of course, I have a lot of knowledge about ventilators in general in the ICU or in the ER setting. So it's going to be a great episode that's coming up. So just keep in mind that that's going to be happening. And don't forget, of course, we're not ending the episode right now by any means, but don't forget to share, like, subscribe. If someone that you know about, you feel that they need to hear the information that we're presenting, whether that be episode 1 or episode 100, please don't hesitate to share that. What else can we talk about? I mean, I think that's why I wanted to have the transport time conversation on the first episode, because I think a lot of stuff is going to, when we talk about vents, when we talk about cardiac arrest, when we talk about CPAP, when we talk about certain time-sensitive situations, yes, getting to the patient as quick as we can is always beneficial. But then the transport times, I think it's all going to reflect back to, what you do in the city scene compared to what I do per se of how long I stay on scene and treat somebody and what I can do en route. That's not dangerous for me or for the patient, or not beneficial. Like CPR on the back of a truck is not beneficial for the patient. I will die on that hill. You have to be on a mechanical device in the back of that truck, unless you don't
where you
fit
find
it.
them.
Yeah, yeah.
You work them where you find them.
Or they slip back
Unless you
into it on
can't,
your.
but
Yeah,
you work them where you find them.
and we'll talk all about that. But what else are you excited about, or what else you want to talk about when it comes to the transport times that can, if we get into a topic 4 or 5 episodes, 100 episodes down the road, and be like, hey, go back and listen to episode 1 where we kind of discuss the in and out, the in the city and out of the city EMS world. Once again, Rob and I, we operate under the same scope of practice in the state of Ohio. We just have 2 totally different, he works 12 hours, I work 24. That's way different. So his run volume, much bigger than mine in general, his amount of stations that you have, amount of trucks that you have. I think you double up on me, right?
So we're in the low to mid 20s.
Okay, yeah, you double up.
12.
So we're right at 11. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
there's the fire departments that have transport vehicles that add a few, but not a lot. Maybe 6, 8 more.
So fire doesn't transport for us. They're a first responder. They're kind of they can get there in that first a couple minutes of doing BLS. That's kind of like the idea behind them. I would say as far as we're talking about times, time to somebody and the time that it takes to get a certain amount of care to a certain individual is important.
Mm-hmm.
Transport time is becoming something of a victim of the ability of EMS to do more,
to stabilize.
So if we can do more in the field, if we can duplicate what's going to happen in the first 10 to 15 minutes of an emergency room on scene, well, we're going to be on scene more. So transport times are going to then be longer, which is going to be better for our individuals that are doing the care. I mean, you can always demand more money from a union standpoint. You can always talk about like, hey, listen, now in my specific place, we're doing BiPAP. We can do epi, salumedrol, duonebs, bronchodilators, mag sulfate. What happens in an emergency room when you bring a respiratory
Restaurant, yeah,
distress
when you
in.
walk in as
So
a yeah.
right. So you have all these options that you can do. And again, it depends on what is your training level, what is your competency level, how are you guys measuring that kind of stuff?
Mhm.
You know, where does your medical director and your command staff and your city you know, what level do they trust you to provide this kind of stuff?
Right.
So all that kind of comes into account. And, you know, because of that, transport times might suffer, but we always still look at response times. How can we get care to somebody quicker versus do we really need to just scoop somebody up and start running to the hospital? Diesel therapy matters in airway. Diesel therapy matters in certain situations.
Sure.
It doesn't always matter. I mean, I
And
worked in areas where cardiac arrest was diesel therapy. That is not the way to go.
not any
So
no.
there's
And
right.
there's studies that we can bank on. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's the thing. It's like if you listen to the science and you trust in your members and the people that are doing the job, you trust in your ability to train it and to keep competency records and to prove to the state, yeah, we're training this stuff and we're constantly training this stuff and we're doing this.
Yep.
But then again, what resources are you willing to put into that? And that is
Yeah.
all going to be
Yeah, our training
municipality really.
department
And
yeah, our training
yeah,
department is it's a big budget. Our training department is a much bigger budget than it used to be
it's a
when I
big
first
deal.
started here.
Yeah,
And
it's a
I can
big deal.
almost probably say the same for you, you know. You
Yeah,
probably
it's a
train
big
way
deal.
different than when you did in the beginning.
And it all starts with training. If you can say, "Oh, we want to do this." I'll say, you know, or whole blood or pediatric CPAP or vents or anything that has kind of been finger thoracostomies that are coming out. If you can't execute a training plan, the ability to record your training plan to show that you have competency for you know for lawsuit records, and then not only just initially train it, but how do you continue to train that as people go through new hires, like there's all that stuff that goes through it. Everything
Right.
ends up going through training and
Yep.
you know a good relationship with your medical director and you know that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
that's huge. Oh man, that's a whole nother topic too. I mean, we have a
yeah.
great relationship with our medical directors. We have several, you know, we have the main medical director. And one cool thing too about my area is we're on one unified protocol. So even the fire departments that do transport, they're on the same protocol as us. And we're on the
Oh,
same
okay.
protocol as them. They have a
Do
committee.
they take like do they take the same like protocol tests and all that stuff?
Uh I don't know
Like do they do the same
because
training?
they're still responsible for their own training.
Oh,
Even though
okay, yeah, yeah.
we do some mutual training with them, like, we will invite them to our training or we'll, like, I in January, I had a fire department who's a full-time fire department with 2 transport vehicles, you know, busy fire department and EMS system inside of my own EMS system.
Mhm.
It's actually busy enough where that is, where that territory can justify my county truck and 2 of their, um, transport vehicles. It's that
Okay,
dense. Okay, so it hasn't. So our transport, our response times are really good in those
sure.
areas. Um, so like somebody knew that I was a high performance CPR trainer, and they said, "Hey, Kyle, would you be willing to come and train our whole department again, like we did, you know, 3 years ago? Can you do a refresher for us?"
Okay,
Absolutely. Went to my boss. Hey, you know, this fire department asked me to come down and train their guys and gals. You know, 1, 2, 3 days in a row. Can I do that? Absolutely. We have very good mutual, discussions with them. We're on the same protocol, so we can talk the same language. Now, some fire departments are running Zoll, and some fire departments are running, you know, physio or striker. So I have to know both systems to be able to train on all of it.
oh
But
that
when
sucks.
it, yeah,
That sucks.
well, it's okay. I mean, I'm okay because I could be on scene with a striker, and I have,
Sure,
and
sure,
they got to
of
them
course.
first, and I need to know how to. And now I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
per se the one operating that device if they're running lead on that call. I'm not running that device, but at least I know what to look at, what to do. They know what to look at on mine and what to do. And then
Okay,
when they see my puck and they understand what my puck is doing and they're looking at the feedback, they understand because they've
great.
trained on it with me, you know. So it's this weird dynamic where I'm at because we do have fire departments that run full blown fire and EMS just like a Columbus fire would, but they are responsible for their township.
Okay.
Will they do mutual aid in the next city over or the next township over? Absolutely, just depending on the run card. So, and that's where some of the run times in our area can get a little bit long. Where if we're depleted, like we will move. We have 11 trucks, so if we get depleted in one area of the county, we can position some other trucks in a position where we can hit either place in half the time. We can hit my township,
Sure.
or we can go up to the other township in half the response time. So we do that as well, at least during the waking hours because we're 24, so we do sleep, of course, unless
So
some.
we do a lot of the same stuff. So we do have joint training that we've done. So I'm the lead instructor for the city's EMT, like state EMT
Okay,
class. So when fire has a class, they have to be certified EMTs. I'm the lead instructor for their EMT class.
cool.
So I'm the first guy that they see. So they have to pass EMT.
Yeah, that's
We've
awesome.
also done like joint training, extrication kind of stuff from through their academy or like cutting people out of cars, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. We do the same. Yeah,
it's always good to maybe increase joint training, especially like MCI stuff.
yeah,
We've done a few
yeah.
MCI things through the city recently, which is more than we've done. So I'm really happy of that direction that we're going as far as like joint training and understanding police, fire, and EMS.
Yeah.
How do you communicate in those scenes? Who's running what, who's in charge of what.
Right.
How do you disperse your services the best in any situation, because it's always going to be a shit show. So
Yeah.
how do you best figure that out?
Right.
We also do something called dynamic stationing, which like you had said, if there's a hole in the city, we'll station an ambulance in that area that can respond to a radius. So there's a lot of stuff, and again, that all goes back to response times. So how do you shorten response times? How does your city and leadership measure the metric of response times? And like what's the importance of it? And then how do you fix it? And
Right.
so like kind of circling back, like how important is response time to your municipality, depending on what your abilities are. If your response time is 20 minutes because of space, you can't change that. If it's because of people, well, maybe you can control that. So there's a
Right.
lot of stuff that goes into how do you get services to people when they need it the most in those situations. And, thinking like cardiac arrest, hemorrhagic shock. Those are the two ones that time matters,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Outside of that, but those are the two killers. If you don't have time and luck on your side,
Yeah.
you
Well, and that's why it's
unfortunately
so
may not save that
important.
patient.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have the community know to start CPR or to apply
Yes.
pressure, for things like that.
So
Um,
we do that as well. I just want to say one more thing.
sure.
We invest heavily in training our community. So we have a
Same.
community education department
Yeah. There's
as
a
far
whole.
as like
Hey, everybody, that's another
certifying
topic. We're
everybody
adding
in
it to the list.
yeah, stop the bleed,
Yep.
CPR training. Those are
Yep.
huge
Yep.
things. So, and again, I always talk about cardiac arrest and bleeding. Like if you don't have somebody doing something before emergency services show up, the patient may not
It's
survive. I
yeah,
mean, it's just what it
exactly.
is. So,
Well,
like if you invest in your training, that's important, right?
right. And that's one of the cool things that we do now too. So because we're so close to Columbus and a lot of the county that I live in, a lot of the people will go down to Columbus for events. So I'm part of our PR group. So we are going down to the Blue Jackets game at the end of the month, and we're going to be on first responder night, and we're going to be providing hands-only CPR training along with
Yeah,
other
we've
people.
done the same.
Yeah, along
Yeah,
with
we've done
other
the same.
departments that may be doing it in a different part of the arena. So
Sure.
we still invest in, because we know that our population goes to Columbus for social events. And, we don't
Yep.
have a major, we have one major social event in our county every September. It's called the Little Brown Jug, and it's at our fairgrounds. And it's a big deal, right? It's harness racing, and it's a big deal. I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until I worked at a few different times, and I'm like, man, this is a big deal. Like on Jug Day, it is all hands on deck for the most part, right?
Sure.
And what's odd about that is what we call the city. It's not like your city, but it's the city, Delaware City. It is.
Sure.
They have 3 or 4 transport vehicles. They have a little bit higher run volume because of density. They have shorter response times because of location and how many people are in those areas. But half of that half of that fairgrounds is in the county coverage and half of that fairgrounds is in the city coverage. So we're both there together. So we
Yeah.
will, depending on things. Now we will provide a Kubota and a bike team so we can travel the whole thing. But ultimately, depending on what side of the fairgrounds you're on, is it Delaware City going to be transporting you or Delaware County going to be transporting you? So
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're at the Crash Up Derby, Delaware County Station 1 is right outside that gate. If you're at the front entrance, that's the city's, area. So, it just depends on what you have. But the good thing is we usually have a command group. We have mutual meetings. We have what they call a combined chief initiative where the chiefs meet. It's called pre-hospital care board. So we're all on the same page. Even our call center is the same. Our dispatch is the same. Some of those fire departments are transport departments and some of them are not transport and they provide BLS. So it's kind of
Okay.
like a shared thing. Like you mentioned
Okay.
earlier about your fire departments providing BLS care and first responder care. We could have that, but we could have some of our fire departments actually transport as well.
Okay. So yeah, so we typically don't go across city lines. Cleveland is Cleveland.
Exactly. Well, and that's what's great about, what we're going to be bringing everybody that's listening is we're going to be bringing, sometimes the same exact, interpretation, and other times it's going to be nothing wrong with either one of them, but just different. And I think that's why we decided to start this because there was enough differences and enough topics. And Rob and I are both very passionate about the education side of it. So, anything else you want to talk about on the transport times, Rob? I think we've
No, and I
covered it
think I
all.
just wanna end on the subject that you talked about. A lot of the stuff that I bring up is stuff that is brought to me by other members as well. Like a lot of questions that people have about, hey, what do we do in this situation?
Mm,
And then if they respect you enough to like actually want your answer or opinion, like what do you do in an MCI that borders a town? What do you do when you have a situation where the patient requires a longer transport time versus a closer hospital, and then explaining like, why do I need to work a cardiac arrest where I find them? Like all these
yeah,
different things
yeah,
where if they trust you as an educator and as a fellow person, like uh, uh, explaining the whys, I think are what I really want to get out of there. Why does this stuff matter?
right,
What are we talking about, and why does it matter
right.
in our departments? Right?
Yeah, and it's not backed by just Rob and I's opinion. Like we follow it up by not only our medical direction and the studies that they have maybe even been a part of. So this what's going to be great for the listener is when we bring you information, it's going to be solid, right? There may be a couple of
Yeah.
things where I say, well, I may have a firm belief in this form of intubation. So there may be some things like that, but ultimately it's going to be discussions that when we have our iGel discussion or our supraglottic airway discussion of how important it is in the outcomes of cardiac arrests and what the studies show, like we're going to be able to pull up some of this stuff and offer you science-based medicine, because I think that's another thing, Rob, that this could be a whole nother discussion is how important the science-based study is now in EMS now that we're so much older than we used to be. EMS as a general. Because you got to remember,
Sure. Yeah.
we didn't start EMS. I mean, EMS really didn't start. I mean, when did Cleveland start EMS? We started in
50
72.
years. 50
So
years.
you're at 50s. Yeah,
We
we're at
just celebrated our
55.
50 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's what's crazy. You'd think that EMS was around in the 60s. It wasn't. it was
Right.
it was
Right.
a lot of times it was, we can even talk about that one day as like the history of EMS.
And what's crazy with EMS is once we started establishing ourselves,
Yeah.
things started moving. Like there wasn't like a time frame where EMS was like we could rest on our laurels. Like it was like, no, you're just going to keep evolving like exponentially. And then again, like I started with 12 leads. Now then 12 leads can be telecommunicated to a hospital before the patient even gets there, and we work on door to balloon times. Like all these things that work. It wasn't like we could rest on 12 leads for 30 years,
Right.
right? It was like, oh, 12 leads. Oh yeah, what can we do next? Oh,
Yeah.
you could do,
Yep.
you could do this. Well, what can we do next?
Yep.
It's always this evolving door where people like you and I, as instructors and educators, have to be on our toes with the science,
Yep.
because at any given moment, like we might read something and be like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then 6 months later, our boss comes and be like, hey, you're going to be doing this. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I just read about that 6 months ago. Like, all right, here we go. Let's just train
Right.
this new thing, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these changes that happens based on medicine in general. And we are just an outskirt of medicine. Right. Right. We're just this outskirt of medicine, right?
And I I love what you just said there. I tell people that we are part of the healthcare system.
Oh
When
yeah.
people
Oh yeah.
if people and this is, maybe maybe the last kind of thing we just, drop before we close out the show, but if you don't feel that you're not part of the healthcare system, then we need to have a talk, because if you're part of the chain of survival, you're part of the healthcare system. And I've been on
Sure.
both sides of the fence. Rob has been on both sides of the fence. I have actually treated someone on scene and then the next day had him at the hospital in the ICU. So
That's crazy.
I've
Yeah.
seen like I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly of what happens in the field, right, wrong, or indifferent, and what happens on the back end. I'm super excited to get this started with you, Rob. I'm glad that you're gung ho for it too. Don't forget to tune in to our next episode. We're going to be talking. We're doing a deep dive on ventilators. Rob has a lot of information about ventilators for the EMS system, the 911 pre-hospital setting. I have a big ventilator background for the hospital setting, so it's going to be a nice little blend of what I know of that didn't translate into EMS that could possibly be not could be, is being translated into EMS, and the different types of people doing it. So I think that's it, right? Nice little
Yeah. I
plug.
think we
Nice
rocked it
little,
out.
yeah,
I
nice little
think we did
plug for the
great.
next episode. We
Yeah.
covered the transport stuff, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks, Rob, for walking with me on this path of information that we're getting out to the younger group and to the existing people that want to tune in.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for everybody that is listening. So keep listening, and we're going to keep trying to put out some really cool content.
Thank you for listening to EMS In and Out. 2 systems, 1 profession, real conversations. If this episode challenged your thinking, share it with someone on your shift. And remember, keep learning, keep questioning, and always follow your local protocols and medical direction. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell so you'll be notified anytime new episodes drop. And as always, stay safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next call.